welcome back everyone to this another episode of Facilitating Stories on Software Architecture and Design. So we are going to talk today with Andrea, who's going to tell us a story. And with us is Andrew as well. Hello, Andrew. This content series, which we don't give it a name, we don't call it a podcast or a vlog or anything. It's just a series of conversations about stories where you might be an architect or a designer that believe that we need to do decentralized decision making or facilitating software architecture, but you struggle. And these are all stories about these struggles that we on a daily basis still have as well. So it's also a little bit for us. We learn a lot. In the previous episode, we say, well, as long as nobody's listening, doesn't matter. We're learning. So we hope you're learning as well. So Andrea, it's up to you to tell a story.
It's my turn to tell a story. And I'm switching tack a little bit. And what I'm going to give you is a scenario. And then I'm going to want to ask some questions. And how would you go about it? So this is the scenario. Imagine you just arrived at work and you're doing work stuff. And suddenly there's a ping in your whatever messaging platform you use for communicating with your people. And in there's an incident, like a high importance instance. One of your colleagues goes off, investigates. You're like, oh, do in your hand, and they're fine. And then during this whole thing, your colleague decides to stop something. They're like, this client can't do X. That's their decision, and it's in the middle of an incident. So that's what happens that day. Because it's a high importance instance, the very next day, let's say, there's a meeting with your colleague, yourself, and a few other people that are higher in the hierarchy to review this and other things. During that scenario, the review is that the action that your colleague took was correct, which is an interesting point that you might want to comment on. And then that's where it stays. However, there is an obvious thing that people that are in the hierarchy a little bit higher than you, they want to investigate further to see if this is something like, what do we do next? Okay, this was the good decision for now, but what do we do in the future? Someone volunteers to do the investigation, another one of your colleagues, they go off and do it, and they come back saying that actually we should allow it. There's another meeting, this same group where this happened, communicates to the rest of us that the decision has been reverted. And actually precisely the thing that was stopped is allowed with no change. The only thing that changes the understanding the hierarchy has, but with not an extra context. But your colleague is not completely impressed because they are, well, this is going to happen again. That's the context. That's the story. The story, obviously, I mean, I'm sure it happens. Something similar probably happened to you. So this question that I'm going to pose is about governance. We were talking about it a little bit in the previous episode. And so also about how would you deal with this, or what could happen in option A, a very autocratic and centralized place, versus B, more decentralized. It's like, can we talk about the whole experience? Like, incidents happen all the time. You make decisions. None of those things are strange, and they will happen in both scenarios. But I would love to hear about how things could be different or the same. Like, any similarities and differences is where we should do both, especially focusing on governance. Whoever wants to go first.
One thing I wanted to say that I think you implied happened, but one of the biggest things that I make sure is like, maybe you have to retrospectively create it. You document each decision separately. So you write an ADR, maybe retrospectively, because the person didn't have time. They just, based on the things they knew at the time, they took a decision. So that should be represented as an ADR. Then the revisiting of that decision shouldn't reopen that ADR after they're decided, acted upon. ADRs are read only. That's like a big deal for me. So then there should be a subsequent decision which supersedes the older one. So you've got the record of the history and all of that kind of stuff. Because if you don't have that, if you keep going back and reopening decisions, that's just like paralysis, right? And then it becomes very emotional and all this kind of stuff. So I've got other thoughts, but I'll shut up for Kenny. But that's the big one. It's like, right, because it's not like one decision you kept going back to. One was actually taken, and then there was a subsequent thing. So that's, I would record those separately.
Yeah, it's more like that I'm making an emphasis on a few aspects here. The governance, the human story, and what happened, and also we like it to be different and how. And it feels like one coherent story itself. Like at the end of the day, the system has like it's behaving in a certain way, and that's kind of interesting too. That's the three kind of angles that I'm seeing in this too. So I totally agree on the decisions themselves, and that they should be not all encompassing. And actually, let me just one more thing, and then you never finish anything.
Yeah, I think Rebecca, and we should invite her once, she talks about the earliest responsible moment you can take a decision, right? And you have the last responsible moment, but the earliest, I think she calls it earliest. So she says, take him as soon as possible. And then you go into Andrew's mode, right? We can take him now, and then you can supersede them later on. And I think it's the same with coding, right? Make small codes. People are very afraid of making a decision there. So that's the human aspect for some reason. People are very much afraid of taking smaller decisions or smaller changes for some reason. And the second thing that I hear you say, and I'm curious, and that's a question to you, she's not impressed by the decision. People sometimes see decisions as a single thing in time, but it might be many decisions. So for some person coming in, and maybe it's a new person, right? And they take a decision, but for that person, it might be maybe the 50th time that it happened to that person, right? I'm not sure if that was the case here. Is that what you're,
so,
because they're not impressed. So I'm like, okay, there's something there maybe. I'm not sure.
Absolutely. So for some further context, in this particular case that I'm thinking of, some of this comes as a background of we're not investing in actually solving our systemic issues. And when there's an incident, we are the ones that have to respond. Like, and this particular colleague was very tired. Oh, like, well, why can't we actually fix the problems? Why do we keep saying yes? And the pressure is always like, well, because the market moves faster than us, which is, I get it. Also, there's a balance there that needs to be had. You can only put plasters over your wound so many times. If you keep kind of going, like imagine you have a wound there, right? And it's not healing. And so before it starts healing a little bit, plaster. Okay, cool. Maybe okay for now, but you have to wash your hands, etc. Soon after you plaster, thinking. At some point, your hand actually gets damaged. I think this is the point at which my colleague was when they were not impressed.
Yeah, and I think that goes a little bit into hierarchical structures. And I have a little bit of the thing not against, but the partnership of management roles. Because what I usually see is that managers are like, I'm in this position to help. But what does help mean? So that A implies that people need help. That's the first assumption I see managers take. Do they actually need help with this? And B, is it for me to solve? So this is what I see a lot of managers do wrong. Instead of asking first, okay, where do you need help? How can I help you make this decision better next time and give people insight? They rather think, hey, I need to help them. That's assumption A. And then they are already moving forward. So there's not even an agreement on should we change or should we help? Someone's already moving forward with, okay, then we need to go forward. And that's like a mental model separation, right? One person is like, this was fine. We took the decision. Let's move on. And the other person is, well, no, we're going to investigate this. So it should be more facilitation and collaboration in that point than, it came as a news flash a week later that, again, someone else took the decision. And I've had this with a manager that says, no, I'm not going to take this decision. You're going to take this decision. Else we're going to breed into the systematic problem that teams don't make decisions because they're, and then a manager takes a decision, but they're not okay with that decision. So that manager actually took a stand. I'm not taking a decision anymore because every time I'm just feeding the beast.
I think in this situation, it was really hard to do anything that feels right. basically. This is
Yeah.
why I think it's such a good place for asking about governance and asking about what would this situation feel like and be like, and how can we facilitate these decisions in a more centralized place. That's why I thought this is a rock and a hard place, right? So
Yeah, I think there's something as well about like allyship, right? And I don't just mean like DEI allyship, but like you said, Kenny, right? You could lend your political capital or organizational capital or whatever, social capital to the person making the decision and echo and repeat it as opposed to taking it on. Like make sure that the ownership still belongs where that person is and provide you the weight of your experience and maybe extra context, right? Like, you know, this isn't just happened once, it happens all the time. And here is me as a manager saying 30% of this team's time is spent restarting this system because of this thing that's, you know, and so therefore we know that, you know, the revenue from various customers is super key, but also we know that the loss, you know, there might be access and have privy to access to information, which the person just turning the thing off hasn't got, but they might be able to lend that kind of political capital to stuff. I've seen the anti-pattern where people go, we're all in this room to decide, and if you don't decide, I'll decide for you. And the end result is no one decides because they don't want to be responsible, because then it'll ultimately go to the big boss. Right. And when that drives completely wrong behavior.
There's some very good examples early on in my career from project managers or managers that did the good thing. I remember one project manager that came to us, and this was like a banking industry where after the crisis, where, you know, there was a project that they need all the information to know that the bank is healthy. So then we had this project manager, I remember vividly, coming to us and he said, what do you think that is needed, right? Because the COO thinks this and this, and we said together as a team, this is what we need, this is how we need to build it. So he asked us, he kept asking question what we need. Okay, so this is what you need. Okay, I'm going to arrange it. And then later that day, he started lunching with the COO, and you saw him really influence as a CEO. And later on that day, he came, okay, I arranged it. Let's go. I put full trust in you as a team. And we were very successful because that person enabled that success to happen, right? They're saying, okay, this is a different approach, but you're the expert. We hired you as experts. And I think that's for any architect in that role, that's the shift. So I've seen managers, you can choose two sides, right? You can choose the side of the hierarchy or you can choose the side of the team.
Yep.
My main value-based heuristic, I always put value into the team.
Yep.
And that's hard, but yeah, being in a leadership position is hard.
Yeah, because that's the thing, if you lose the team, right? Like maybe this time they, you know, like your example, Andrea, like maybe they go, okay, I'll just do it. And they go along with the decision, but you're slowly losing that person's commitment,
no,
right?
it's actually, I think it's kind of systematically designed so that people burn out after some time and they leave and there's enough time to replace them.
So the people who've been there longer, who don't have to live in this world. I mean, this is the thing, like I don't know what it is I want to write about next, but like something about the fact that we live in these code socio-technical systems, that's not, we don't pay enough attention to that, right? But it does, and we move in and out of it. We change companies, we change job roles, and we move teams and stuff, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, we don't pay enough attention to the systematic thing, right? There's this famous comic I share with Evelyn and Heen in our trainings that was like, okay, who has some ideas? And then someone says, well, I think no. Okay, more ideas. I think this, no, that's shit. Come on, keep sharing ideas. We're not aware of that systematic. So if a person gets told like 3 times no, of course they're not going to share anymore, or they're just going to do what they want. I remember people saying, yeah, I'm just here to do my job and then I get back home, which is fine, but at least make it explicit how we're going to do it. And I think consent is there. Good. How are we going to work together as well? I think that's the important part is, okay, how much decision-making power do you have? And this is what I talk a lot and we tell in the book as well. I've been in this situation where I was going to a CTO and the CTO came in and sat me down and says, hey, you've been working for 6 months now on this thing and we're going to Azure and I have this idea, maybe looking at the market, we should move to Kotlin, for instance. I don't think that's a good idea because everyone here does C# and it's a whole different ecosystem. And yeah, we're going to do it anyway. And I'm like, no, wait, what happened here? You already took the decision for yourself and that's fine. You're in a leadership position, but at least tell me that you took the decision. Even though in your book, Andrea, you talk about decentralized decision and the advice process, you might not be in that situation, but you can start writing ADRs and say, this is the
ADRs are the way in.
this is how we're going to take these. So there's several other options of taking decisions. And even though you don't follow the advice process, you can at least make an ADR and say, we're going to follow this decision.
100%.
I have an add-on to that. What if actually everything is being documented? But listen to what I just said. Everything is being documented. So actually finding coherence, let's imagine that not just that is being documented, but something else. It's kind of, what if the DRs and other similar documentation is being weaponized? I am adding to so how would you decentralize there? Because everyone is being transparent enough. But that doesn't remove the inherent problems of this broken and hard place situation. So
100%.
actually, what do you do there?
I've got opinions on this.
Okay, I'm all
So,
ears.
so before it became popular, I quoted, because I think, there's the famous CIA manual for like disrupting. So people seem to think it's for disrupting like kind of socialist bureaucracies and like communist bureaucracies. But like the patterns they lay out is like just basically how to make everything go really slowly, or to like just confuse everything, or just create loads of noise. And it's basically follow the rules to the letter and constantly complain about things and write everything down and all these kind of things, right? So kind of take autonomy out of the people and put them into the system, and then you weaponize the system, right? What I do to do that, because people do this, right? And people figure out, I mean, like I've done it, right? Like if I'm like, this decision is implicit, so let's weaponize an ADR by making it explicit, so that we can say, right, we know we don't agree, but here it is, it's written down. The other thing I use though, and I need to write a blog post about this because this isn't in the book. If you do the 4 key metrics for decisions, you can see the broader systems, like the flow of decision making. So in the four key metrics of decision making would be the number of decisions per month or whatever, the time it takes to make a decision, the number of, so instead of deployment failures, it would be like decisions which are superseded, and then the time to restore service would be the time it takes to come back, right? So then you would see how many decisions, where they're coming from. You could also look at like the number of sources of decisions, right? How long it takes to go. So if it's very bureaucratic, they'll all take ages. And then you'll see the same decision being revisited over and over again, and then you can step back and go, this feels a little bit weird, right? This feels like it's being weaponized, or at least we're paralyzed. Even if we're not weaponizing it, we're weaponizing it against ourselves because we're scared to decide or something.
I think you can add that we use in the book. So you can actually do a sense making where you ask people, how ready are you to make the decision? Right? And then you can we sense make that.
Yeah.
We teach that people
I love this
just
'cause
start that.
the quantitative and the more quantitative way to kind of actually look at the system. So that's a heuristic, Kenny, since you're apparently today in a heuristic collecting mood. So when you're doing decisions, make sure to check quantitatively and quantitatively how your decisions are doing.
Yeah, totally. Like Rebecca's also like, you should add an extra thing. I don't think it comes from Rebecca, but there's some studies on this. You should add an extra field to your ADRs, which is how I feel making this decision. So again, things, right? So,
yeah, that's the sense making I usually do. How do you feel about it? Are you ready for the
frustrated.
this already powerful? I did it in a previous training where I just teach them this, meteor developers. Me and Evelyn teach that. And their discussion was like, huh? Oh, interesting. And then the decision got much more powerful. And they were like, oh, this is one thing that I can do tomorrow, right? So adding these sense making to it, and Rebecca talks about it as well.
So there's a few Rebeccas in the world. Can we quantify?
First Brock.
Just
Rebecca
there's
Worsbrock.
some other people in this area, but I figured it was her.
Yeah, people who. So that's another heuristic. Start following Rebecca Worsbrock now. She's got some good content, and she started the DD meme, right, with her responsibility-driven design. She started. It's all Rebecca's fault with the RDD. But thanks again for this episode. So this was the last episode with the 3 of us. Next time, we're going to invite other people to come up with stories. So we have a whole list already that we talked about in these last episodes that we're going to invite. So I hope everyone enjoyed again, watching this, reading this, listening to this, whatever. All right, we're trying to bring the content the way you like it. If you like it, please follow us on the podcast or on the YouTube and give us feedback. Join our Discord community. So you can go to virtualdd.com and there's a big button that you can join the Discord community and you can keep the conversation alive. Hope to see you there. And if you have a story to tell, come there as well. Start chatting with us and we can invite you to one of the other episodes. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Andrew. and see you next time.
Cheers.